people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Yes, so the rematch is there for me.
Okay.
It's just whether or not there'll be a warm fight in between. So that's what I'm just waiting on to see what the plan is next for me.
What do you want? Do you want to just go straight into it, or do you want a...
Yes, I'd love to just jump straight into it, definitely. But it's like anything. There's always the business side of boxing, and it needs building up. I'd quite happily go to America.
Would you?
But the reality is, she doesn't sell in America. And it's sad, it's really sad.
Gosh, that's fighting talk already.
It's true. You know, for what she's achieved, she should be the face of female sport in America, but she's not, because her attitude is lifting. It's disgraceful. And it's sad, it's really sad. And I'm quite shocked, you know, Dimitri Salita or Mark Taffet hasn't pulled her aside and said, look, Clarissa, let's just be humble, let's just be nice. But you can't help herself. It just sells. Female boxing at the minute in the UK is massive. It's bigger than what it is in America. And look, we sold out the O2 Arena. I've got no doubt that we could sell out St James's Park, especially with the backing of obviously the Saudis coming in and buying Newcastle United. And look at the views, 2 million views. And I don't think we'd get that if we went stateside.
Now, as you can imagine, Claressa Shields didn't take too kindly to Savannah Marshall's recent Sky Sports interview in reference to a second fight and what it would take to make it. Claressa herself said, "This is why I don't like this bitch. You can't say that I don't sell in America when I'm more known than you. Come fight me in America, and you will see how many people come out to see me whoop your ass again. You lost, and you can't sell out 20,000 fans without me in the UK."
Maybe that's true. Maybe she can't do 20,000 without Claressa, but Claressa can't do 20,000 without her.
Claressa's never sold 20,000 tickets to a fight here in America.
She's never brought in 2 million views for any fight she's had outside of the Savannah Marshall fight in the UK.
Those are not opinions. Those are facts.
Simple as.
Facts by the numbers. Claressa, statistically, has not shown the drawing power here in the United States it would take to make the fight here in the United States. Savannah Marshall caught wind of Claressa's recent comments and stated,
"You know about coming to America."
She stated, where? In a Flint Leisure Center? In front of 14 people? Hashtag top the flops.
What you have to ask yourself is, does this fight sell 20,000 tickets in America? Does it bring in 2 million views?
It's a legitimate question. When Savannah Marshall said that women's boxing is bigger in the UK than it is in the US, that's just a fact. That's just a reality.
It's bigger in the UK and it's bigger in Europe than it is in America.
It's the way it's been the last couple of years. And the fact that Claressa Shields had to travel abroad for the first fight, for their initial meeting, the fact she had to go to the UK to do the fight.
For a network to pay for it.
When Claressa started out, when she debuted as a professional, she was boxing on the Showtime platform, and she was there for a while, but circa 2020, that relationship ended.
Claressa said they wanted to cut her pay.
Cut it in half. I believe the number was 300,000. They wanted to cut it down to 150,000 from 300,000.
That's what it was.
And after the relationship ended, you know, Claressa Shields, she was down there at junior middleweight. She had the Marie-Eve Dicaire fight, what was the undisputed junior middleweight championship.
It ended up on Fight TV.
It ended up there as a pay-per-view.
How many people do you think bought that pay-per-view?
How many of those people in Claressa Shields' comments, the ones who follow her on social media and profess their support of her?
How many people do you think bought that pay-per-view?
Many of those people. It's very easy to go on these social media platforms and profess your support of a fighter because these social media platforms are free.
That pay-per-view was not. Now, how many people do you think bought that pay-per-view?
Claressa Shields continued, "I'll beat your ass again anywhere in America. You're just a scary-ass pussy who can't stand on her word. You were supposed to KO me, and you didn't. Hurt me? Didn't. Now you're mad because you don't call no shots. Keep living with 0 belts, and that damn blonde on you is hideous."
Claressa Shields is holding Savannah Marshall to her word. And I don't blame her.
I understand. I'm not unsympathetic. If Clarissa won the first fight abroad, it's only right that the second fight take place in Clarissa's backyard. The problem is, who in Clarissa's backyard is going to bankroll it?
Because somebody has to.
It's not as simple as holding Savannah to her word and making the money magically appear to pay for this thing.
It's not.
Clarissa has a promoter, you know, Dimitri Salita of Salita Promotions, and he has a couple of fighters, but what he ain't got is a broadcast partner. He ain't got no network deal, thus no network money to pay to do the fight in America.
As condescending as Savannah sounds, she's not wrong.
Look, if the promoters here stateside felt that Clarissa can sell 20,000 tickets with this fight, then they'd get behind her because everybody wants to make money.
The promoters with broadcast partners, the promoters that have an ESPN behind them, or a Showtime, or a DAZN.
If they felt that this fight could bring their platforms 2 million views and sell 20,000 tickets the way it did in the UK, if they were confident they could duplicate that here in the US, then they'd get behind her.
There wouldn't be a problem.
Then it'd just be a matter of getting Savannah on a plane and getting her into the country. And I'm not even sure that she can.
You know, because of that list of 600 people that are banned from entering into the United States on the premise they're somehow connected to Daniel Kinahan.
That's a separate matter, though. When you sift through the barbs traded between Clarissa and Savannah, what Savannah is saying, there is an air of truth to it.
Their first fight was broadcasted here in America by way of ESPN+. They aired it. They showed it.
But they're not the ones that paid for it. They're not the ones that made it happen. Sky Sports and Boxer paid for it. They made it happen.
They put the money up to do the show. They paid the fighters.
They are based out of the UK, not the US. That's why Clarissa had to go over there.
Now ask yourself, if Clarissa really is a draw here in America, then why ain't ESPN stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, we'll pay for the fight, we'll do it here?
If they felt that that fight could bring 2 million views to their platform and the fight itself can sell 20,000 tickets like it did in the UK, if they felt that way...
Does this sell out the big room in Madison Square Garden? Huh? New York City? Huh?
It's a logistics issue. At its base, that's what it is. And it is an issue. Without network money to pay for the show and pay the fighters, how do you do the fight in America?
It's a legitimate question that needs an answer.
This is a fight that needs an American-based backer, an American-based network to pay to do the fight in America. Otherwise, I don't know how it happens. In men's bantamweight news, on the heels of Naoya Inoue's ascent to the super bantamweight division and vacating all those alphabet titles he picked up, unifying this division, Nonito Donaire versus Alejandro Santiago has been approved for the vacant WBC title. Date and location to be announced.
This is what I told you would happen.
Now, Nonito Donaire has a somewhat clearer picture of his next title opportunity. BoxingScene.com has confirmed that the WBC has approved a vacant bantamweight title fight between Donaire and Mexico's own Alejandro Santiago. The pairing would satisfy the terms of the two highest-ranked available contenders vying for one of the 4 titles left behind by Naoya Inoue.
The division is an open book now.
The titles will be redistributed, and WBC President Mauricio Suleiman revealed the development during a recent interview with ESPN Knockout, confirming a February 1st news break by BoxingScene.com stating that Santiago was likely next to land the title shot.
You know, in the past, Team Donaire had expressed an interest in potentially moving down to Superfly and taking on Juan Francisco Estrada.
Seeing about becoming a 5-division champion because Nonito never held a belt there, and it was ambitious, but I wondered how palpable a possibility that was. Would Gallo Estrada be interested, or would he be preoccupied with something else?
Would Gallo do it?
Whereas this seemed more reasonable to me. The opportunity to fight for another belt in the bantamweight division. There's still work to be done, as a firm date, location, and a platform is still being sought for the vacant title fight. BoxingScene.com has learned that the bout could potentially land on a Premier Boxing Champions show sometime in late spring or early summer. Donaire aims to once again break his own record as the oldest fighter to win a bantamweight title. Santiago will enter his second career title fight. The 27-year-old Tijuana native held then IBF junior bantamweight titleist Jerwin Ancajas to a 12-round draw in their September 2018 clash in Oakland, California. Assuming the fight takes place in the first half of 2023,
this year,
Donaire will be 40 years old when he enters the ring. A win by the Phil Am boxing superstar and former 4-division titleist who is now based out of Las Vegas would set another record, which he already shares, by entering his 4th bantamweight title reign. Donaire first won the WBC and WBO bantamweight titles in a rousing second-round knockout of Fernando Montiel. The win saw Donaire, who was just 29 at the time, become a 2-division champion, having held the IBF flyweight championship Championship and a secondary version of the WBA Junior Bantamweight title, he since claimed the lineal IBF and WBO Junior Bantamweight Championship in a run that saw Donaire earn 2012 Fighter of the Year accolades.
Nonito's not quite ready to call it a career. He's still got history to make, and he could make it if he beats Santiago.
He's already a 4-division champion, and he's already been a champion at this weight, this particular weight, bantamweight, more than once.
The day he does decide to hang him up, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's the kind of career he's got.
Now, initially, it was supposed to be Donaire versus Maloney for the newly vacated WBC title, but talks fell flat upon the WBC ordering Maloney versus Donaire, which ended with Top Rank pulling Maloney in favor of pursuing the vacant WBO title.
Didn't come as a surprise to me.
Top Rank's always had a way with the WBO in positioning their fighters to fight for that particular title. The brown belt, Jason Maloney, he just so happens to be one of their fighters. The WBC subsequently approved Donaire versus Santiago after previously naming a title eliminator between Kai Kanha and the former title challenger, Raymond Caballo, who suffered a fourth-round knockout defeat to Donaire in December of 2021. Santiago has won his last 3 starts since a competitive 10th round defeat to then unbeaten Gary Antonio Russell in November of 2021. All 3 wins took place in a productive 2022 campaign, including a 7th round knockout of Antonio Nieves in their October 29th rematch after having previously fought to an August 2016 split decision draw. Alejandro Santiago sports a professional record of 27 wins with 3 losses, 5 draws.
14 knockouts.
Having never been knocked out in 35 professional contests, 35 professional bouts, many years younger than Nonito Donaire.
Approximately 13 years younger.
Nonito is 40, whereas Alejandro, he's very spry, 27 years old. Though Alejandro, he's never competed at the same level as a Nonito Donaire. And you know what they say?
What do they say?
Power is the last thing to go. And Nonito Donaire, he's still got a lot of power. I remember the Nordinu Bali fight, the Raymond Caballo fight.
He beat the fuck out of those guys. The piss. And the shit. They were both unbeaten fighters going into those fights with Nonito Donaire, you know. Nordinu Bali and Raymond Caballo.
Gave them both their first professional losses. I think Nordinu Bali, he decided to retire off that loss. Raymond Caballo, he's still floating around. Better still, power's the last thing to go. And time has proven that Nonito Donaire still packs a punch. He's still got power in that left hook.
You say that Alejandro Santiago's never been stopped.
Well, Nordinu Bali had never been stopped ahead of that fight with Donaire. Raymond Caballo, same deal, same thing. He'd never been stopped either.
There's a first time for everything.
For Alejandro, it may not be the first time that he loses a fight. He's already lost 3 professional contests, 3 professional bouts. May not be the first time he loses a fight, but it may be the first time he gets knocked out.
Nito's a big puncher.
He stands a legitimate chance of seeing himself crowned a world champion once again in a men's bantamweight division. The reset button has been hit at 118 pounds, and a lot of belts, they're up for grabs. The WBC is just one.
WBO is yet another.
Jason Maloney, he's in hot pursuit of that. I'm not surprised this is how the cookie is crumbling at 118 pounds now that Naoya Inoue has moved up. I told you, there's not a lot of guys out there. Not a lot of guys I'd give good odds against today's Nonito Donaire, even at 40 years old.
Not everybody's Naoya Inoue, you know.
Jason Maloney ain't, that's for goddamn sure. When push came to shove, he'd rather fight a lesser-known fighter for some other alphabet title than run the risks of taking on Nonito.
So the guy he's supposed to be fighting, he ain't got Nonito's profile.
But hey, those guys know what they're doing. Finally, in men's heavyweight news, Eddie Hearn reveals major heavyweight fight he wants to make for June 3rd in the Middle East.
What's this guy talking about?
Eddie Hearn looks to stage Wilder versus Ruiz in the Middle East this summer. Matchroom chairman Eddie Hearn confirmed to media outlet International Boxing News that June 3rd is a possible...
Wait a minute. Eddie Hearn's gonna promote that show.
No Smoke Boxing understands the likely date for the next edition of the Champion Series in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Matchroom debuted in the region last November when they staged 3 title fights topped by Dimitri Bivol's dominant decision win over Zurdo Ramirez to retain his light heavyweight title in the main fight. Chantel Cameron became undisputed with a convincing win over Jessica McCaskill, and Mancunian Zelfa Barrett suffered a 9th-round TKO loss to Shavkat Rakhimov despite being ahead in the fight. There were rumors circulating that Bivol would once again top the Abu Dhabi bill in June, likely against British contender Joshua Buatsi. But Hearn has now told International Boxing News that he would like to make the fight between former WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder and former unified champion
and Andy Ruiz.
I think it would come as quite a shock to a lot of people if Matchroom ended up with the rights to that fight instead of the PBC. Wilder and Ruiz were supposed to collide in the WBC final eliminator on a PBC pay-per-view card in late spring, early summer. But ESPN's Mike Kopinger reported that the PBC couldn't financially satisfy both fighters. This doesn't come as a major surprise, as multiple outlets have reported that Wilder's last bout generated only 75,000 buys in the US, while Ruiz's clash against Ortiz did even less, at an alleged 65,000. The Bronze Bomber has since claimed to 78 Sports that he is an open agent, quote unquote, and will field offers from different promoters for his next fight.
That's the trade-off of sticking everything on pay-per-view. If you're relying on the upside of a pay-per-view to get you your money,
what happens when there ain't no upside? The former champion specifically mentioned the Middle East when discussing where his fight with Ruiz could land, in line with what Hearn has stated. The British promoter has confirmed that talks between himself and Wilder's team have been much more positive recently than in the years prior, and even reluctantly hinted that he was talking to them last week.
the investors in Abu Dhabi are willing to bankroll this fight. And then suddenly, Deontay ain't got to worry about the upside of a pay-per-view to get his money.
It does depend on the deal structure. If the deal structure is that the investors over there in the UAE, they're going to buy the rights to the fight.
From what we know, they make their deals with the fighters individually. A deal for Wilder and a separate deal for Ruiz.
That's how they do things. They then buy the rights for the fight and auction off the rights to the highest bidder. But if Eddie Hearn is involved, if Matchroom is promoting the show, in essence, that means the show could land on DAZN.
Eddie Hearn taking that fight to the Middle East would be a major play, not only for his business and DAZN, but staging a fight that has his major rivals in the PBC, Showtime, and Fox. Those guys cannot afford to make.
Because that's the story. The story is that both Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz, they were dissatisfied with the money that the PBC was going to put up for the fight.
And what they were willing to put up for the fight between them was likely based on how their pay-per-views performed. And their pay-per-views, they didn't perform well. Neither one cracked 100,000 buys.
So perhaps, based on that, the PBC is unwilling to throw money at this thing, the kind of money that Wilder wants and the kind of money that Andy wants, on the premise that they don't know these two guys can bring it back.
They ain't got it to blow, but maybe the people in Abu Dhabi do.
I mean, Wilder said there's no bad blood between him and the PBC, and he did say that they are working on the Andy Ruiz fight, but he also said that he'd be traveling to the Middle East for potential suitors.
And he also said he's an open agent. He's willing to fight on any platform.
At 38, going on 39 years old, it behooves him to conduct his business in this way.
Go where the money is.
Wherever it is, because you're nearing the end and you can't keep doing this forever.
Nobody can.
It would be quite the affront to Al Heyman's PBC and his broadcast partners if this fight ends up going to DAZN by way of Matchroom, as opposed to one of their affiliate networks, really just one, Showtime,
Since Fox is said to be out of boxing.
And can you imagine what the reaction will be if news breaks that not only is the fight made, but it's part of the DAZN schedule, not the Showtime schedule, up until this point?
If Eddie poaches this fight,
I can't even begin with what the implications might be.
if Matchroom gets this fight, wow.